Hello, I'm Patrick Abbott. Welcome to my Substack podcast, and today I have Sister Alison Regina Goliath. Sister, how are you today?
I'm wonderful. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for being on. Here's a quick question for you. What's going to make this conversation interesting?
Um, well, I write vampire books, so that might be interesting.
Yes, and for people who, because this is an audio only podcast, Sister is in her nun attire. So, first off, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm a daughter of St. Paul. I entered the congregation in 2017, so it's been a couple years now. And the mission of the Daughters of St. Paul is to evangelize using all forms of media and social communication. And a big part of our charism is really meeting people where they are, speaking the languages of today, getting familiar with the culture, and finding Jesus there and all the different seeds that the Holy Spirit plants in our current culture. I generally, my apostolate is working in our publishing house, Pauline Books and Media, as an acquisitions editor, but I am also an author, and I also do a lot of different things on social media as well as part of our outreach for that. Yeah, that's how I got into writing vampire books, was actually when I was working in the publishing house, seeing all of these submissions coming in and being like, I think I could do this too. And I have stories that I want to be out there that are not out there now, that I kind of felt Jesus inspiring me to write. So that was kind of what first got me writing.
So, one thing, the big elephant in the room, and I'm glad you kind of hinted at it, and the way I've always tried to figure out this question is, how does a nun write a vampire book, especially a young adult vampire book? You've kind of hinted at meeting people where they are, but does not compute. Please explain to us.
Yeah, you're not the first person who has asked this question, so do not be afraid. Um, so I grew up reading lots of vampire books and a lot of sci-fi and fantasy, different things that were not religious based at all. In fact, I don't really remember any books when I was a teenager that really had strong depictions of the Catholic faith or of the church or people practicing a faith. And I really felt that lacking as a young person who really did take church seriously and did try to have a relationship with God as well as I could. And there's something about vampire books when you look at vampire legends, like the original myths surrounding vampires, that are very religious, like Dracula, for example. The Eucharist is instrumental in Dracula for his downfall, and the idea of like consecrated ground or holy water being very effective against vampires. But a lot of modern vampire stories don't really get into the why of how that works or even necessarily depict that at all, whereas it's very important to the older vampire legends that like a vampire is something that's evil. So obviously, if you are facing something that's evil or maybe even has demonic origins, you need a divine solution to that. You need divine assistance. It's not a natural thing that you can just defeat on your own. It's a supernatural problem, so you need a supernatural solution. So what I
That's
was
going to be a meme right there.
So what I was trying to do with my vampire trilogy was really telling a modern day story in like the current young adult style of writing and literature, but bringing back a lot of the different religious underpinning that is in a lot of the original vampire lore. And so what that means basically is that all of my world building is very theological and has a lot of different theological ramifications. My approach to vampires is not the reanimated corpses approach or the demonic possession approach. Um, my vampires are what humans look like when they reject God and their humanity to the greatest extent that it is possible for a human to do that. So my vampires are like as close to a demon as a human could ever get, but they are still human because once you are human, you can't just stop being human. Like the essence of your nature does not change. So depicting vampires that way really gave me the chance to explore a lot of realities about the consequences of evil and the power of God in the face of evil and what spiritual warfare looks like, and especially the sacraments and the power of the sacraments. The Eucharist is huge in my book, so is baptism, confirmation also is gonna be a bigger part, especially in the 3rd book, which no one has seen yet. But, so having that active relationship with the sacraments within the church and the spiritual journeys of the characters really matter in my books as well. The main character, Elizabeth, is a practicing Catholic, and that really saves her life in encounters with hungry vampires more than once. And the main vampire character, Christopher, is a vampire who is kind of an outcast from other vampires, and at the start of book 1, which is called The Curse He Chose, he has started to develop a conscience, and he hates that he is developing a conscience. Like, it freaks him out because that is not something that vampires are supposed to have or have concerns about. And so he's kind of wondering, like, why am I different? Why is God singling me out somehow? Like what is going on here? So there's a lot of spiritual questions and spiritual journeys wrapped up in the plot, even as you have all the classic vampire things happening throughout the story.
Okay, and that's a good little rundown of basically everything on my questions. So I'll pull out a few things. Your first book, The Curse He Chose. The second book, The Light They Live. Can you give a brief synopsis of just kind of a teaser to get people interested in reading them?
Yeah. So the curse he chose, the main character is Elizabeth, she has just graduated from high school, and all her friends are going off to college and leaving her behind, and so she's kind of bitter about that. But then she stumbles into a fight between vampires one night and realizes she may have bigger problems to worry about. So she is forced on the run with Christopher, a vampire outcast who might be in even more trouble than she is. And as the two of them have to work together to figure out how to survive the vampires that are hunting them, Elizabeth starts to realize that the best protection that she has from the evil vampires and the best way to help Christopher is actually through her Catholic faith. So that's book 1, The Curse He Chose. Book 2, which is called The Light They Left, picks up a few months later, but this time you're seeing the story from Christopher's point of view as he's starting to regain memories of his past when he used to be human. And so it kind of follows a lot of the different strands, and enemies that were surviving at the end of The Curse He Chose come back, but it's really following Christopher's journey as he continues going deeper into his questions about who he is and if conversion is even possible in a case like his, and what it looks like to actually forgive yourself and embrace God's mercy and figure out all of the other things that he has going on in his life after living over 100 years as a vampire in a very different lifestyle. So.
And I want to thank your publisher for giving me a copy of The Light They Left, which got me to buy the first book, and I read them both for the Blitz. So in some Christian fiction, it's more pastoral, and that's what I try to go with Fallen and even the Savannah Paranormal Detective Agency, almost to the point that people can say, yes, it's a religious fiction book. No, it's not religious fiction. And you go all the way to things like Left Behind, which are rather on the nose. You get The Shack, which is explicitly, no doubt, whatever Christian worldview on a pastoral level. Where does religion fit in your stories? How does religion come across, especially with your mission of reaching people where they are?
Well, as a reader who did not write the book, you might have more insight into this than I do, but what I was hoping to do with this series was to really have the Catholicism woven in throughout, but as a very organic part of the story and who the characters are, so that it's not something that's tacked in from the outside or like as an afterthought, but it is really part of the story. And if you took it out, like the whole story would fall apart. I tried to write it in a way that was accessible for people, no matter what their faith background is. Obviously, if you're Catholic, there's probably some more things that you're going to appreciate that don't get explained in depth because you're coming at it from that worldview. But I've had practicing Catholics read it. I've had non-practicing, fallen away Catholics read it, or like just disinterested Catholics, like, yeah, I guess I'm Catholic, but I don't really care, read it and enjoy it. And I've had non-Catholics read it as well. And actually, I just heard this morning of someone who started OCIA after reading these books. So
it's all worth it.
Yeah, so it is doing something, but even the non-Catholics who have read it, I've heard feedback from them that there's certain things where it's like, yeah, there's a lot of Catholic terminology in here, but there's actually a glossary in the back for all of the that's helpful. but it's not supposed to be preachy. It's not supposed to be kind of shoving it in your face. It's just presenting like, well, this is the world that these characters are living in, and this faith is important to the main character and becoming more important to the main vampire character. And so because of that, uh, the Catholicism is definitely there pretty much on every page, but it's not in your face, I hope.
Okay. And that's the way I saw it too. It's a missionary book without being missionary so blatant. So you did the job there. What's your favorite part of the book series so far?
Oh, that's a really hard question.
That's why I'm
Um,
here.
I can't answer that in a lot of depth without giving spoilers, but the ending of the epilogue of book 2, The Light They Left, I think is my favorite part so far of the story that y'all have seen. There's a big plot twist there, and I have to say that that was a plot twist even to me. When Jesus was first telling me about the plot for book 2 and he brought that up, I was like so surprised that I like almost fell over, like literally almost fell over because I did not see it coming either. So I think that it's just really fun now for me to like realize like I've been keeping this secret to myself for a long time, but now finally other readers are getting to get to that part as well and enjoy it with me, which is a lot of fun for me as an author.
Based on what you said there, and we can edit this part out if you don't want to go there. I tell my friends that the characters keep me hostage, that they tell me how the story goes. And you mentioned Jesus was an influence in your story. Do the story ideas come to you in prayer? Do they kind of reveal themselves in your mind? Can you explain what you meant by that?
Yeah. All of my best story ideas do come from Jesus. Like I talk to Jesus a lot. We spend a lot of time. He tells me lots of stories and most of them are not things that would ever be published. It's just things for him and me to enjoy and for me to better understand my relationship with him and who I am as a person and my eternal destiny to hopefully one day go to heaven. But Jesus often will tell me stories that
Right.
that are something that he wants me to write down for others, and the curse he chose was like that. So the way that that works is not him like word for word dictating everything that I write. It's more it usually starts with him kind of telling me the story and introducing me to the characters and like it's like a light turning on in my head, like all of this inspiration that just suddenly comes when I'm in conversation with him. And then the process of writing it down is something that I also do in conversation with him because I can kind of tell like if a scene is not working or it just doesn't feel right, it's usually because I stopped listening to Jesus or started trying to like take the story from him and force it in my own direction. But when I return to him and ask him about it, he's able to kind of help me see, okay, delete that whole scene and start over. That wasn't what I wanted. And it helps me a lot. But you mentioned feeling like you're being held hostage by your characters, and I think that's part of it too. Is that Jesus helps introduces me to these people who live in my head, and then kind of I need to follow the story and see where they go and what they're gonna do. And it's important for me when I'm writing to really stay true to my characters as far as not what I want them to do or think that they should do in this situation, but what would they actually do in this situation. And sometimes that goes places where I wasn't expecting, like with the end of book 2.
That sounds 1,000 times more pleasant than my experiences because the first time I had a dream that involved my characters interacting with me, it was them basically on the stage going, "You got the scene wrong. This is
Oh
how it
no.
happens." And in the dream, they acted it out. And basically, they were looking at me almost glowering, like, "This is how it happened, Patrick." And I'm just there, okay.
Like, okay, sorry. I'll write it better next time, I promise.
Yeah, meanwhile, you got the Son of God just explaining everything to you, and I wish. So, you mentioned the OCIA person who's entering the faith because of your stories. So, obviously, that's a check mark that your work is actually worthwhile in the Catholic sense. Was it difficult to sell the story to your religious superiors? Like, hey, I want to spend some of my time writing vampire fiction.
I did most of the writing actually in my free time, so it wasn't cutting into my apostolic duties or anything like that. But actually, the sisters were very supportive pretty much from the first time that I showed it to them. I first shared it with a few sisters in the editorial department whom I worked with more closely, like, just to kinda get their feedback, and I was really nervous about it, actually, because it's like, yeah, nuns don't write vampire books, and this is a little unusual compared to what we usually publish from Pauline Books and Media. But when they read the story and kind of saw what it was doing and the approach that I was taking and how all of the different spiritual things were playing out as part of the story, they were like, "Okay, this is gonna work. Like, this is an important story. It's you're teaching all of these things, but in a really effective way through this genre, and even though it is something different, we think that it's something that we wanna, like, take a chance on and try, branching out in that direction." And so it did take time for us to kind of get ourselves together, like, positioned well to be able to, like, edit and release books like this because it is a little unconventional compared to what we usually do. But I have been blown away by the support of my sisters and even telling other people about the book and be like, "No, I know it sounds weird, but just hear me out. This is a good book. You gotta check it out." So, it's been really beautiful for me to feel that support and love from my community and just how much they believe in this project as well, and seeing the fruit that it's bearing in the lives of readers and how they're sharing that with me too. Some readers reach out to me directly to kind of share what their experience was with the book or how it's helped them with their relationship with God, but sometimes they tell other sisters about it, or they come into our book centers and other places where I don't live and share these stories, and the sisters are always so excited to, like, send me pictures or tell me, like, what the message was or send me an email about it, and I love that too.
Okay, so especially in the 1800s, when modern day fantasy and science romance, what science fiction came from, up until the 1950s, there was overall strong themes of religion, whether explicitly Christian or Christian influenced, or even in the stories, religion mattering to the characters. Yet in the 1960s, we started seeing more and more atheistic takes. And now in the smaller presses and indie presses, you're kind of seeing a pushback against that, where religion is taking a role as a factor in the story.
Mhm.
How do you see the importance of religion in various speculative fictions, whether explicitly for a religious audience or for a general audience?
I think that it is important to include because if you're showing these worlds that have no element of faith or religion or belief in something like invisible realities, that might not be something that readers immediately notice, but the books we read do a lot to help shape our worldviews and the way that we tend to approach problems or see the world. And if you never have any depictions of faith or spirituality or religion in stories, it kind of sends, like, in the subtext of the message that this isn't something that you need to spend your time on, or it's not something that really matters, or even it's not something that's real. And so I think that it is really helpful. I mean, not that every single book that's ever been written should have a religious subplot or something going on in it, but it's so important, I think, to have stories that do tackle those topics, and not only those stories written by people who hate the church or are atheists, but also people who actually do believe in the faith that they practice and have a relationship with God and see God as a real actor in our world and in our lives and are not afraid to include him in the stories, not just as an abstract idea, but even as an agent within the story who's actually changing and taking part in it as well. So that's something that I have been trying as I just finished a grad school program in creative writing, and that was one of the things I was looking for was books that are published in mainstream publishing, but have portrayals of religion or faith in them. Um, and they're hard to find because publishers don't necessarily advertise them that way, even if there is some kind of religious part in the book, because it's not what they think is going to sell. And so that's something too that I think that it's like the publishing industry is a business. And so it is important for religious presses and indie presses and smaller presses to include those things that are being overlooked by mainstream publishers in a lot of ways. And we have the power to do that as writers and as readers who support those types of stories that do share religious themes in significant ways. Like that's in our power to change that, but we have to be intentional about how we participate in that.
Okay, and on that theme, at the very, very top, way top level, the religious theme in your book is religion make vampire go away. So good. But what do you, beyond that, what do you hope the audience gets out of the religious elements of the story?
I think that one of the big things that I'm hoping readers walk away with is a sense that God is real. He really does stuff and he really cares about you, like a lot. Like no matter what you've done, even no reader of this book is going to be as bad as the vampires in this story or have done all of the things that the vampires have done in my stories. But even if you are that far gone, God's mercy is still like looking for you and hoping that you're going to embrace it and come towards God. So that's one big thing. And another big thing that I'm really hoping for is that readers also see how beautiful it is to be a part of the church and how much God gives life-giving graces through being a member of the church and taking part in the sacramental life, and how that's really like the miraculous way that God intervenes in our world all the time in order to help us go to heaven and become the people that he calls us to be. He doesn't ask us to do that on our own. He gives us the church to help us with that. And so I think those twofold things, like having a personal relationship with God and trusting in his mercy, and then being a part of the church would be my main religious hopes for this story.
So I'm going to attempt to talk about my favorite scene without any spoilers, and it's
Oh,
towards
brave.
it's the climax basically of the light they left, and I'm going to speak kind of in vague shadows to try to work around it without spoiling it, but I hope you understand what I mean. And for my own readers, I'll reference it's sort of like the climax of Risen. The main character is given a choice, it's a test. It's almost like the Japanese Christians, what they went through as shown in Silence. It's, hey, all this can end, just do this. The character makes the right choice. And I think we know what scene I'm talking about, yes?
Yes.
What was it like to write such an emotional, meaningful scene, especially as a nun?
I think that whenever there's something really spiritual going on in the story that the characters are living, I am also kind of vicariously living that through them and drawing on my own experiences with things happening. In this situation, it's kind of like what a lot of the early martyrs were faced with, like the worship false gods or deny your God or die type situation. And it's funny because you said that like this character chooses the right thing. I was actually hoping to show kind of in that moment of like he wants to choose the right thing, but doesn't actually know if he is strong enough to make that choice. But because he had that intention, it all like God worked with that and it did end up in a good place. Okay, this is also very vague because I don't want to spoil too much. But I think for me, that's something that I've grappled with a lot of thinking about. I've never been in a situation where martyrdom was a possibility or where someone has threatened me with death or any other bad thing if I didn't deny my faith. But I do often kind of wonder, like in that moment, would I be able to do that? Like what would I do? And so a lot of the stories that I write, I think kind of grapple with that question in different ways because it's something that I'm grappling with too and trying to understand better that also it's not all about me and what I can do. It's really like trusting that God would give the grace if that was a situation that I ever found myself in, that I can trust him and his power. It's not all about me, it's about him. And so that was a very powerful moment for me to be writing. Also because it's like one of the climaxes of this character's spiritual arcs after like reading hundreds of pages of the journey to get to this point
About
and then
600,
realizing
I counted, yeah, in the two
yeah, yeah.
books.
So at that point too, it's like you're so deep into it and invested in this character that you're like, please don't mess this up. You can do it, I promise.
And I want to especially call that out because a lot of times people assume the author is just inserting themselves as self inserts into the story. Yet obviously Christopher is not you, or at least I hope he's not you.
I've never been a vampire, actually. I would like that on the record.
Nobody accused you of it, so it's odd that it is on the record. But you brought up the great point about how even with characters who aren't self-inserts, the author can encounter, struggle, and even embrace the difficulties that the characters go through, that they themselves are going through. That writing can all be, in a way, I don't want to say self-therapy, but a way to self-discover and go deeper down and understand the meanings more. Was
Mm.
that the hardest thing in your writings you've encountered, or has there been something more challenging?
I think that there's always a piece of myself in every character I write because I have to understand them to be able to write them, even if I don't understand everything about them. But I think when I think about like the challenges of writing this series, um, kind of on a practical level, I had never written a trilogy before. And so figuring out how to tell this story in such a way that each book has its own arc and really feels like it's a complete story, but also it's building somewhere that has like a grand resolution at the end of book three, was tricky for me, partly because I am not a plotter. I do not figure things out because I'm just waiting for Jesus to inspire me, and I'm like, "Well, I hope this will work." Um, so it was
Take
a
the
huge
keyboard, Jesus.
yeah. So it was a huge act of faith actually to, be writing. I wrote the first book originally as a standalone, and the sisters were the ones who really wanted to see Christopher's journey continue and know more about it. So I started writing the sequel, and then they came back to me partway through that and were like, "Actually, 3 books, not 2." So I was like, "Okay, hold on, guys. We really need to like settle on a number here so that I can figure this out." But I told them like, "Yeah, I could do 3," because I felt Jesus like calling me like, "Yeah, this is the commitment. You can make this commitment." But I told them I could do 3 before I actually knew what book 3 would be about at all. So, it was kind of this really huge act of faith in Jesus that like, "Okay, you brought me through book 1, you brought me through book 2, and you promised that you were, like, not gonna leave me throughout this process, and you were the one who told me to submit this to the publishing house, even though I was a little bit afraid to and didn't want to. So, I'm trusting that you are gonna see this through to the end." Um, and he did, but it was scary to trust him with that type of bigger thing. So, I think that might actually be the hardest part, even though that didn't actually have to do with the writing itself per se.
I understand, and again, I'm jealous because one, you have Jesus. Two, I have
We
characters who
all
were.
have Jesus. You
You
can talk
have.
to him too.
He's basically Patrick. You're. We gave you will. You can figure out this book.
Okay, that's fair.
Meanwhile, I have characters who have taken it from one book to, okay, 2 books to tell the characters' saga. Okay, done. Well, you got to tie up the story, and that's going to take 4 books. So I'm working through close to the final draft of the 4th book. I really hope that they honor their hostage agreement with me. So it should be good there. But
Oh my lord.
besides being the ghostwriter for the Word of God, what advice do you have for new authors or current authors?
Okay, I wouldn't call myself a ghostwriter for Jesus because that makes it sound like, "Oh, yeah, this is basically, like, the next level down from the Bible," which I would not claim, that. I do think that all of us can ask for God to inspire us in our stories and to help us with that process, even though it's gonna look different for everybody. Like you said, Jesus is like, "Well, I gave you everything you need, figure it out." He's definitely done that with me before in certain situations too, or, like, when I'm agonizing over a choice of like, should I do it this way or this way? And Jesus is after like 15 minutes of me staring at the page is like, it doesn't actually matter. Like whatever you do will be fine. I'm like, okay, I needed to know that so that I could actually move forward with this. But I think that if I was giving writing advice to people who are trying to tell stories that are important to them, that really like mean something or communicate deeper truths, to tell a story that you are excited about and that you are passionate about. Like, if you don't love it, nobody else is going to love it either. No matter how hard you try or how much you want to teach someone or preach to them through this, like, you have to love the story. And when it comes to sharing deeper truths, like keep your reader in mind as well, and don't make it a sermon. Like, stay true to what the story really needs and how to tell this as a good story with good characters, and trust that the deeper things that are important to you that you want to communicate are going to come through, or that you can revise it to make them come through more clearly. Um, but don't turn it into a place to push your own agenda, because even if you do get your agenda in there, if the story is not good, the characters are not good, no one's going to care about your agenda, or they might even dislike it because of the way that you're presenting it. So storytelling is not about agendas. It's about bringing the reader through on this experience where the reader is really involved with their mind, thinking about the story, forming theories about it, with their heart, like emotionally getting attached and involved to the different characters and things that are going on, and their will, which is when readers are judging what's going on, or like forming opinions about what's happening in the story. So I think it's really important to remember that, like, your readers are bringing a lot to this too, and to respect them and their agency and their ability to make the story their own and to make connections themselves, and don't hit them over the head with stuff that you really don't want them to miss, or try to preach to them in such a blatant way, because that's not what they're there for. They're there for a good story, and you can give them that and the deeper truths if you as a writer really stay true to your craft and to the characters that you're telling your story about.
Thank you. So, what's next for you?
It's a secret. I will say a little bit. I just graduated from grad school, as I mentioned, with a
Congratulations.
degree in creative writing, and part of what I had to do to graduate was write a novel. And it is very different from the vampires. I'm excited about it, but it's not done yet. Like, I still haven't shared it with my publishing house, but I am hoping that it would be something we publish sometime. It's more in the sci-fi direction than the urban fantasy style vampire books that I've done before. So I'm very excited about that one, and I hope that someday I will get to share it with everybody.
So, it would be really neat to see your sci-fi novel when it comes out. It seems more and more Catholic commentators and individuals are writing sci-fi novels, and as a Catholic who writes sci-fi novels, hey, the more the merrier.
Yeah.
So obviously that's a little bit in the future, but in the meantime, if people wanted to find your work or read up more about you, newsletter, something like that, where would they go?
Yeah, my author website is probably the easiest place to like see all of the different books and things that I've been working on. And that is my last name, Goliot.pauline.org. So Goliot is GLIOT. Like Daughters of St. Paul, Pauline.org. And you can also find me on social media pretty easily if you just, my handle is sister_Alison. So I'm the nun who writes vampire books. It's like in my in my description, you'll find me pretty easily.
Just Google nun vampire books. There you go. You'll be fine.
You might find me that way. There's not too many nuns that write vampire books. So
if there's more than one, we need a convention just to see how it happened. Like,
if you meet one, let me know.
If I find another one, I'll definitely let you know. I want to thank you so much for your time, but of course, my last question, what else do you have to tell the people?
Something that I love to tell people is that I have been praying for all of the readers of these books since long before I ever shared them with anyone. It was not long after I started writing the story down. I'm like, okay, Jesus, this is really cool, getting all these ideas. He was like, great, start praying for the readers. And I was like, what readers? Like, at that time, I was not planning on sharing.
This is just for me.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I'm not showing this to anybody. He's like, no, pray for the reader. Like, start now, pray for the readers. I'm like, okay. So that was something that, I mean, years before it ever got submitted to the publishing house, I'm like, okay, this is my spiritual responsibility as a daughter of St. Paul to like pray for the future readers and the current readers of the stories that I write, that God can really do something with it in their lives, and even in little ways, either brighten their day or draw them closer to God. So that is something that I do love to share with people, is that like, I've been praying for you for a long time. We'll continue to pray for you, not just me, but all of the sisters of our congregation, the Daughters of St. Paul. We're here to pray for especially people who work in the media, which involves all of the books and book things and all of the people who engage with the media and consume media, which is readers and listeners of this podcast and any other form of digital communication, that like we are here to pray for you. So please just know that, and I hope that helps you feel a little bit closer to God today.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, sister.
Thank you.